This film tells how two people struggle to come to terms with both the unfortunate past and the undesirable present. They both are unable to express the feelings, bottling everything up as if nothing has happened. They avoid connection with most of the people around them, even if others try. Lee Chandler is a repairman and janitor in Queens. He is depressed and nothing cheers him up. He does certain things every day. He goes to work, shovels snow and takes customers' garbage to the trash can. He is fugitive from people. Not only he doesn't talk to anyone, but just he talks in a way that eventually leads to a physical fight. This anger and type of behavior of Lee causes him to be fired from his workplace. Until they call and tell him that his brother, Joe, has been admitted to the hospital due to a heart attack. Lee and Joe haven't seen each other for a long time. This news makes Lee rush to the hospital in another city as soon as possible, but when he arrives at the hospital, he realizes that his brother has died. He gets shocked but tries to show himself calm. He remembers the past when the doctor talks about Joe's illness in the presence of Joe, Lee, Joe's wife and Lee and Joe's father, congestive heart failure, which eventually causes the death of the patient due to the destruction of the heart muscle, and there is no way to prevent or treat it. At that moment, Joe wasn't the one to lose his temper and joked, and this made his wife uncomfortable. After Lee regains consciousness, he entrusts George, his and Joe's friend, with contacting the burial and shroud company, and he himself goes to Manchester, Massachusetts, to inform his nephew Patrick about his father's death. He thinks back to the past when he lived with his wife and 3 children, went fishing with his brother and nephew and was in a good mood all day. He calls Patrick's school, but finds out that Patrick is at another place for hockey practice, and this makes Lee go the extra mile to deliver the news. Patrick is training and gets into a fight with another player and the coach wants to kick him out of training when Lee comes. Patrick goes to him and when he finds out about his father's death, he is also shocked. This incident makes the coach a little kinder to him and says that he should go. Lee asks Patrick if he wants to see his father's body to have their last conversation but Patrick doesn't give a definite answer. In the end, he sees his father's body for a few seconds, and then they both go home. Patrick asks Lee for permission to invite his friends and order pizza. His friends talk about anything to distract Patrick. His friends stay the night near him. Patrick asks Lee about calling his mother and telling her the news, and he says there's no need to. He remembers the past when he entered Joe's house with Patrick and Joe, and Patrick sees his mother half naked and passed out due to drinking alcohol, and Lee tries to take her to her room. Although Lee said that there is no need to inform his mother and on the other hand, we don't have any number or address from her, he emails her and tells her about what happened. Tomorrow's morning Lee will take Patrick to his school. Patrick goes to hockey practice, but the coach doesn't allow him and tells him that it's better not to practice for a few days so that he can concentrate mentally and spiritually. After school, Lee and Patrick go to the lawyer to open Joe's will. In the will, it is stated that Lee will be Patrick's guardian. Lee disagrees and says that he can't do this and gives the excuse of not having money and his bad living situation. The lawyer says that Joe's house and boat were inherited by Patrick and Joe left a bank account for Lee so that he can use it and watch out for Patrick. Lee says he can't go back and forth between Boston and Manchester, which the lawyer says Joe wanted him to come to Manchester. Lee wants to put this responsibility on their uncle, but still, it doesn't work. Lee can choose whether he can take care of Patrick or not. He thinks about the past and the main reason why he can't come to Manchester. When Lee was living there with his wife and children, one night he and his friends were drinking alcohol and using drugs in the house, and his wife reminded him to take his friends out of the house because of the noise that might wake up the children. When her warning becomes serious, Lee kicks them out of the house. He goes to his children and realizes that the air inside the house is cold, but he can't turn on the heating system because it causes his wife's headache. That's why he uses the fireplace. He gets thirsty, but there is no water at home. Then he goes to a store near the house, but he forgets to put the guard in front of the fireplace. While going to the store and coming back, a piece of firewood falls out of the fireplace and causes the house to catch fire. His wife, Randy, who has become unconscious by the smoke, is taken out by a firefighter and the heating device explodes, preventing other firefighters from entering. All their 3 children are burned in the fire. He explains the whole story to the police and expects to be arrested, but the police release him because they believe he made only one mistake like all people who make mistakes. When he leaves the interrogation room, he tries to kill himself with the gun of one of the policemen, but they stop him. Lee leaves the lawyer's room and tells him that he will call back to see what he can do. Patrick imagines that he has to go to the orphanage, which Lee asks him not to continue. They talk about the boat and Lee wants to sell it, but Patrick wants to keep it, and considering that Lee is supposed to be his guardian and he has to pay for it, he doesn't want to keep the boat. They go to George and he says that this boat's engine isn't working and if they want to keep it, they have to buy it an engine so that the boat can move, and even though Patrick insists on keeping it, Lee is against it because the cost of this work is too high. This discussion continues and Patrick thinks that the reason for Lee's behavior is that he doesn't want to be his guardian. He tells him that he can go to his mother and this makes Lee realize that Patrick is in a relationship with his mother. After that, they go to a burial and shroud company, but they say that due to the fact that it's winter and the ground is hard, they can't bury the body and the body should stay in the morgue until spring. It's hard for Patrick to understand and tolerate this issue and this causes another discussion between them. A fruitless discussion, because nothing is under Lee's control. Patrick takes Lee to his second girlfriend's house for music practice and Patrick asks Lee not to say anything to his first girlfriend because he is investing in this case and the presence of this second daughter is needed. At night, when he comes looking for Patrick, he is waiting for him outside and Patrick's girlfriend's mother tells him that Patrick wants to stay there for dinner and he can be there too, but Lee prefers to leave and then comes back again. At night, Randy, Lee's ex-wife, calls home and asks him to attend Joe's ceremony with each other, and Lee says that he has no problem, although it's more difficult to even think about it, especially when he finds out that Randy is pregnant. Many people come to Joe's memorial ceremony and Lee meets Randy there again. The woman who separated from him after the house fired, she never saw him again. On the night of the ceremony, Patrick asks Lee to invite one of his girlfriends to come home, but he rejects. Then they discuss that he doesn't want to come to Boston, and considering that Lee is only a servant, Patrick tells him what difference it makes and he can come to Manchester. Lee tries to avoid this discussion and leaves the discussion aside. He goes to the past, when he leaves Manchester because of the fire incident. Patrick goes to the refrigerator at night and when he sees the frozen chickens in the freezer, he has a nervous attack because it reminds him of his father's body that was left in the morgue and they still couldn't bury him. Lee comes to him and tries to calm him down. He doesn't talk to him to comfort him, he just stays by his side. He goes back to the past again, when Joe and the little Patrick visit Lee. Lee lives in a small room without furniture. Joe forces him and buys him living things. They are talking about going to Boston again tomorrow's morning. Lee tells him that he can stay with him until the end of the academic year and this is the only thing he can do, and this topic again causes another discussion. Lee takes Patrick to school and when he gives him a pocket-off money. He asks if he charges George for working on the boat and Patrick says he wants to save that money to buy a motor. Lee is faced with Patrick who doesn't want to back down from his decisions. Lee brings his household items to Joe's house. He gets angry that he came to Manchester again, that's why he hits the window glass with his fist and his hand is injured. At the same time, Patrick's mother calls, but after hearing her voice, he can't say anything and hangs up. At night, Patrick discusses with him why he didn't tell him that his mother called and why he didn't talk to her. Lee has nothing to say. He just says that he couldn't talk to his mother and that's why he couldn't talk to her about this issue. Patrick tells him that his mother asked him to go to her for lunch and he wants to stay with her if the conditions are ready. Lee disagrees. Lee is against someone else being his guardian, and on the other hand, Manchester's tolerance is painful for him. The next day, Lee goes to a company to work there as that servant. The official there also tells him that he will inform him. After Lee leaves, one of the employees tells the manager that he has no right to hire him there. Lee goes to other places to work, but the result is one thing, no. At night, when Lee goes to look for Patrick again, there is a discussion about the boat, but it ends soon. After that Patrick asks him to take him to his second girlfriend's house to practice music and when he gets there, he tells Lee that his girlfriend's mother asked him to go there and stay for dinner. Lee guesses that she likes him and asks him to do it for her, even though Lee is against it. But this doesn't work at all because Lee can't communicate with anyone at all and this causes a new discussion to take place between the two of them. He asks him if he can talk to people about anything, but Lee says that he can't talk to people. Next day, Lee brings Patrick to his mother's house to be there for lunch, but he doesn't stay there and returns. Patrick meets his mother's fiancé. He is a very formal person and nothing promising happens during lunch. After he returns, his mother's fiancé emails Patrick that he should be in touch with him to see his mother because this issue will hurt his wife. At night, Lee tells Patrick that they can sell his father's memorial guns so that they can prepare the money for the boat engine. He is happy with this idea and they can buy a new engine for the boat, and this incident starts a relatively better relationship between Lee and Patrick. Lee accidentally sees Randy on the street. Randy stops him and tries to apologize to him about the words she said to him in the past and broke up with him in that way. Lee tries to make her understand that there is nothing, but as Randy continues, Lee finally tells her that he can't understand that there is nothing between the two of them anymore. Patrick suddenly goes and gets into a fight again with someone there, which causes him to be injured. And George comes to help him. Lee constantly breaks down, gets nervous, fights, and that day he cried next to George and George's wife. He goes home at night feeling helpless and unable to say a word. A few days later, Lee talks to Patrick that he has found a job in Boston and gives Patrick the choice of coming with him or living with George. He says that he has talked to George and he can do this until the age of 21, so he can sell the house and make any decision. Patrick asks him if really there is no other way. Lee has only one answer: he can't stand it. It takes a few days for them to come to terms with this issue, but it finally happens, and now that it's spring, they can bury Joe's body. Although Patrick and Lee became a little distant from each other, they can tolerate each other and even enjoy each other.